Potensic is just a really cool thing in that they dropped a brand new firmware update that is not only just bug fixes like you'd expect, fix the things that are broken, but they include brand new features for us for free. I actually found something that was kind of tricky. It took me a little while to figure out, so I'm going to go through that as well, because without this information, you won't really know what to do with this new feature. So I want to talk about the versions themselves just a little bit so you and I are on the same page. The drone firmware version is version 18, that is the new one. The remote controller firmware is version 15, and then the app for iOS is 1.1.4. or Android is 2.5.8. Now you're going to need all of those. It's just not a single upgrade. And Potensic has done a pretty good job at integrating it so it just works. Before we get to loading the firmware, I should probably let you know what these new features are. And there's 5 main ones. There's one called CiniRoll, which is a cinematic kind of rolling of the entire image, which is cool. There's a sphere panel, and we've already had the vertical and the horizontal panels, but this is a sphere that you've seen, and it's actually pretty cool. There's also an option that allows you to take a photo while you're doing a video, which is pretty slick. There's also a spot metering mode for those areas where you need a special meter, which is pretty slick. And I'll show an example of that as well. And then lastly, they've added a definition and saturation adjustment features in the app itself, so you can adjust those things independently. Now they say they've optimized other known issues, but I don't really know what those are. I didn't see anything in the README, so we're just gonna have to take the word for it that they made some things that were broken, not so broken. Now, one thing I do like to do before upgrade firmware is I like to find out what version we're at first. And to do that, you simply go into the settings and you go into the About section, and you'll see the device model, firmware version, and app version. If you click on that firmware version, it'll let you know the drone version and the remote controller version. So write those down and then you'll know where you're starting. So when you go out to the main screen, you can see that it's popping up here. It says that it has a new flight data, but if you wait long enough, it also says that there's a firmware version. So all you have to do is click on that. And before we go into the process of actually clicking the button here and starting that firmware, you want to make sure that you have the remote turned on, your device turned on and connected to the remote, and then the drone turned on as well. Once those are all on and connected, you want to click this upgrade button, and it's going to go through a bunch of different things depending upon how many versions you have. And it will reboot a few times during that process, so you hear some beeps while things go on and off. And what you're seeing on the screen is as it's actually updating and what it's doing here and going through the different features. And I'll speed that up so it doesn't take so long. But it took me about probably 20 minutes in the versions that I have to go through and restart. And once it's all done, I start it back up, go into the 3 little dots, check the About, and now we should see the new version. So the firmware did go and it's in there and it's all current like we expected. Let's take it out in the field and I'll show you how I use these functions. So this is the CiniRoll feature and it's accessed right here. And then we just want to go out here and see what happens. And it tells us, that's really nice, it actually tells us the distance that it's going to go forward, so we know we're not going to run into anything. So let's just go, and then I'll see what this looks like when it's done. We'll play it back on the screen. So it's going straight forward. It looks like it's rotating, and I'm pretty sure the gimbal is not rotating. My guess is it's just artificially rotating within the gimbal. I will have to look and see if the gimbal is rotating, but I don't think it is. I would think that it's probably zoomed in a little bit and then rotating the picture around, but that's okay. It might give some neat effect if you're trying to get some kind of cinematic footage of a certain area, especially if there's some things around. I wanted to go in between these trees a little bit just to give us something rather than just a flat land to kind of fly between maybe. So it looks pretty interesting. It looks pretty cool. We'll see what it looks like when we play it up back off the SD card. But now let's say like in between these trees here, we had a person or some wildlife or something like that, and we wanted to kind of see that a little more. They added something called the spot metering mode, and what that I assume is going to do is if we click on the screen, it should use that as our center and adjust. If we're in auto mode, it should adjust the intensity of the dark area. So right now you can see it's pretty well exposed for the trees and the grass around it. But if there's something, let's say in this dark area, and we meter there, exactly, so it brings up the intensity or the exposure in that area so that we can do a spot metering. We can go ahead, pull it up, and then take our picture, do whatever we want to do so that that area becomes the exposed area. So now if we do this and it does it, and then we click again, it'll lock it there. So that means anything we do, it should stay right there until we turn it off. Now if we go ahead and click on it again and we click unlock, there we go. Then when it goes away in just a few moments, it should go back to normal exposure of the area around it all by itself. And there it goes. So one other thing that they've added is the ability to take a picture while you're recording video, which is pretty slick if you want to kind of capture that. So that's interesting kind of aspect that I hadn't heard people do before. So right now I'm recording a video, but I do see that the photo button is above it now while we're recording. So I would imagine if I click that picture button, I'm going to wait till we get a car here, but I'm imagining if we click that button, it should do a picture at the same time, which is pretty cool. And again, that should be recorded. I will put that up here once it's off the SD card so you guys can see what it looks like. That is an interesting feature for sure. Also, one thing they said they've added is the ability to adjust the saturation. Now, I know when I did my first video and I had the drone float in front of me and I've got that kind of volcano red, they call it, that spider jacket, and it just blew out that camera and people were just like, oh my gosh, wow, look at that thing, it's so oversaturated, it's horrible. And obviously, Potensic took note because you can then, in the camera, instead of trying to do it afterwards, which it is very difficult once the image is recorded, to be able to grab that image and take the saturation down if it's already built in. They've added the ability in the settings. You'll notice that we have definition, which I'm assuming is going to be a sharpening effect because some people do complain that you have over sharpening. So I'm going to take that down. I'm going to try the definition of -1 saturation and definition, which again, I'm assuming is sharpness. And I'm going to do a video. So here's our normal video using the normal saturation and the normal sharpening. And I will put alongside of it, I will put the saturation down and the vivid down so we can see what those look like side by side, just to get some kind of comparison. Next one is the sphere. And the sphere is popped over here. And we notice we have different things here now. We have the panel, which we had before. We have a vertical and a horizontal panel. And there's also the sphere now here. So if we put it up here and we'll do the sphere. And I'm not sure where it will record, if that will record it in the SD card or not, and the drone is just moving the gimbal as it's going through its motions here and then taking these different pictures. And I'm assuming it's going to compile these back together and then we'll look. So again, I'll put those up on the screen here. I don't see anything formed right now at all. It's simply just kind of doing its thing, but I don't see the result. But once I pull it off the SD card, I'll put it up here so we can see what that one looks like as well. So I want to talk a little bit about the sphere panel feature because it is pretty cool. But when I was out there flying and I did that, it just took a bunch of pictures. And when I got home, I looked at the card and there was just a bunch of pictures. And I looked in the app, there was no way that it auto-stitched them. So it was a little confusing to me. Now I do remember in the past with I think an original Mavic, I did this and I did a sphere photo like this. And I remember I had to use a special software to do it. Now I'm sure there's multiple ways you can do it. I heard people talk about putting it into Google and allow them to put it in. The way I did it, I work on a PC a lot. So I went and found a software and I had it loaded before. And the software I used is from Microsoft and it's called Image Composite Editor. And it's a free software. Problem is now, when I used it before, it was kind of a current software, but everywhere I looked, it said that it's now obsolete. So I did find a version online that I could load. Be careful if you do load software like this because you don't want to load a virus. So I'll show you which one I used. But again, do your own due diligence to make sure. When I put it in there, it was pretty straightforward. And the interesting thing was that this allowed me to do multiple versions of this sphere. And I put a few of them in there and adjusted a few of them. And I'll put some up on the screen so you can see what they look like. So I think this is a pretty neat feature. I think it's certainly a success from Potensic, how this sphere works out. I just wish Potensic would have stitched this in the app. Even if it was only one time, it would have been nice for them to do that instead of having to search down some other software. I'm sure there's other ways to do it like I mentioned. And if you know of an easy way to do it either in the app or if you have some software that you just dump it in online and maybe do it or something, go ahead and put it in the comments so everybody else can learn from that as well. But the way I did it did actually work, so there's one option for you. So what do you think of these new features from Potensic, especially for free? Something you think is exciting or ho hum? Let me know in the comments, really appreciate it. So I hope this video is useful to you and you learned something new. And if so, make sure you hit that like button, really appreciate it. Till next time and next video, good flying.